Dublin, Ireland.
Hi, I'm Lori, a senior solo traveler, and not too long ago I posted a video about how to find flight deals. And one of my methods was to look for deals over destinations, which is how I am sitting at Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland right now. I'll talk to you more about how I found that flight deal later, but first let me talk about this trip.
With over a week to explore Dublin, I kept a flexible schedule so that I could adjust my plans to accommodate the weather. The first few days were beautifully sunny, but then it became more overcast with intermittent showers. I did manage to cover vast areas of Dublin as well as take 2 day trips outside the city. I've divided the sightseeing into categories and will let you know what I think is worth seeing and what you might want to skip. At the end of the video, I'll share some tips and advice for anyone planning a visit. So here we go. Let's start with landmarks. I visited several landmarks in the city, but I had 2 favorites. The first was Trinity College, which is an historic campus and the most prestigious in Ireland. I booked a guided tour with one of the students, which was fun and informative. If you plan a visit, here are some of the highlights you will want to check out. Museum building has an amazing skeleton of the now extinct giant Irish deer. Look at the size of those antlers. The outside of the museum has a long row of flowers, and each one is different, something you might not notice without someone pointing it out. The bell tower in the center of campus is beautiful and has a hallway that runs through the middle of it. However, you won't see students walking through it because legend has it that if you pass through it when the bells ring, you will fail all your classes. Now, the main draw to campus is the Book of Kells and Library. The Book of Kells is a 9th century manuscript of the 4 Gospels. It is a beautiful book. However, I thought the library was the best part of the visit. The Gaia artwork overhead was so striking. It was created by an artist and depicts NASA's imagery of the Earth's surface. It is really a contrast with the ancient texts and busts lining the walls. The Brian Boru harp is also on display, which is the oldest surviving Irish harp and the model for the insignia of Ireland. And just so you know, the library is undergoing a restoration project, which is why many of the books have been taken off the shelves. In 2 years, they are going to shut the library down for 15 years to finish the restoration, so I'm happy I was able to see it. My second favorite landmark I visited was Dublin Castle. It is an historic castle and museum with a rich history, multiple architectural styles, and fascinating decor and artifacts. Highlights for me were the grand entry hall, the Waterford crystal chandeliers in the drawing room, the throne, which was installed for a visit of King George IV, and the fabulous ceilings in just about every room. Next to the castle is the City Hall, which you can't completely enter, but you can step to the edge of the atrium to see the magnificent ceiling. If you go to the Dublin Castle, make sure you peer into the City Hall too. There are 2 other landmarks I visited, the Samuel Beckett Bridge and the Spire of Dublin. Both are striking and historic, but if you have limited time, you may not want to go out of your way to see them. Pubs and music. Now, if you go to Ireland, you have to visit some pubs. Ireland is known for its pubs, and there is no shortage of them all over town. As you walk the streets, you can usually identify the pubs because they have flowers hanging all around their doors. The most famous pub is the Temple Bar, which sits in a district full of pubs. It is a very lively area in the evening. I don't drink much, however, I was interested in listening to music. One afternoon at the Temple Bar, there were a couple of musicians playing some traditional Irish tunes. I was delighted.
Drink my boys, up the hair and turn it down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin,
I also heard about a pub called the Cobblestone, where the local musicians go to play. It's what I would call a jam session. I showed up a little before the 2 p.m. opening and chatted with one of the locals. He said that anyone can play and that he came every Saturday. I snagged a front row seat when the place opened, and within 15 minutes, the entire pub was almost full. I loved watching the musicians interact and improvise on their various instruments. Now, I have to say that if you are expecting a polished performance, this is not it. However, there was a liveliness to the event that was exciting and one of the most memorable moments of my trip. Museums and attractions. I visited two museums that I would highly recommend. The first was the Epic Museum, which is a relatively new, high-tech museum focusing on Irish immigration. It was a wonderfully laid out museum with many interactive displays that managed to impart information in a fun and effortless way. They handed out these stamp passports so you could collect stamps from each room you visited. At first, I thought it was a little silly, but I did it anyway and found it somewhat fun to acknowledge the information in each room with a stamp. I learned quite a bit about Irish immigration and the root causes, including famine and war. The second museum I visited was the Tenement Museum. You need to book an appointment online because you are taken through the museum by a tour guide. During the 90-minute tour, you learned stories about the people who lived in these tenements, some of them heartbreaking, but others that show the resilience of the Irish people. You travel from room to room, with each room revealing another story. This museum contrasted with the slick new Epic Museum, but if I had to choose between the two, I would probably choose the Tenement Museum. I was captivated by the stories. There are two other popular tourist attractions that are famous in the brewing and distillery world: the Guinness Storehouse and the Jameson Bow Street Distillery. Both of them have a relatively expensive admission fee, so I chose not to tour their facilities. However, you can still wander in the outer areas where you can purchase a drink, buy a souvenir, or in the case of Jameson's, check out their fantastic chandeliers. Outdoors. Although Dublin is a bustling city, there are some beautiful outdoor spaces. The first thing I did was walk along the River Liffey. The river runs through the heart of the town, and there are several bridges that cross from one side to the other. It is certainly a scenic walk and fun to take pictures from halfway across the bridges. There are two parks I think are worth going out of your way to see. The first is Phoenix Park, which is massive. There are flower gardens, a large fish pond, a tea house, the Dublin Zoo, and the impressive Wellington Monument, to name a few. If the weather is nice, it is a great place to stroll or go for a bike ride. Another gem of a park is St. Stephen's Green. It is a moderate-sized park, somewhat close to Trinity College. There is a pond in the middle with ducks and swans, a flower garden, several statues and monuments, and this beautiful picturesque cottage, which I later learned was the superintendent's lodge. I visited two other parks which were nice, but not necessarily must-sees. The Marion Square Park is somewhat near St. Stephen's Green, but not quite as pretty. However, there is a fun monument to Oscar Wilde, which might make it worth a visit. Croppies Acre, which is close to Phoenix Park, contains a memorial to the dead of the 1798 rebellion and this eye-catching statue and fountain. Churches. I don't think it would be too much of an exaggeration to say that all roads in Dublin lead to a church. There are so many historic churches all over the city that it's hard to walk a block without running into one. Out of all the churches, there are two that are considered the most historic and impressive. The first is St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is the largest in Ireland. It has glorious medieval architecture and numerous artifacts and displays. If you visit, look for the Door of Reconciliation and the tomb of Jonathan Swift. The second church you should visit is Christ Church Cathedral, which is equally impressive. The cathedral has a medieval crypt with a 14th century copy of the Magna Carta, the tomb of Strongbow, and on the surrounding grounds, the homeless Jesus statue, which I thought was intriguing. Both of the cathedrals charge admission to enter, which includes a complimentary audio guide. Shopping. Of course, there are places all over Dublin to shop, and the downtown area certainly caters to tourists. If you are into shopping, there are three areas I would recommend. For more high-class stores, Grafton Street has quite a bit to offer. It is a fun street with countless shops, cafes, and bars. There are buskers periodically lining the pedestrian walkway, so it is a lively area. The Henry Street shopping district is on the north side and has more of a bohemian vibe. It also has many small shops lining the street, but there is also a major mall with a plethora of retailers. Now, if you are looking for souvenirs, I think the place to go is George's Street Arcade. First of all, the building is fantastic. It has handsomely detailed Victorian architecture and brilliant decorative turrets. Within the main entrance are a myriad of small vendors. If you want an Irish trinket to take back with you, you can most certainly find it here. So those are the places to go and sights to see that I would most recommend. I also took a couple of day trips away from the city. One was to the town of Howth, which I reached by local train. The other was a paid motor coach excursion to Glendalough, Wicklow, and Kilkenny. Both of these trips were absolutely fantastic. I have created separate videos on them and will leave a link in the description.
So that's it, my first deals over destination trip. Most people look at destinations first and then try to figure out flights. But if you've got the flexibility like I do, you can flip the switch and look for deals and then figure out if it's a place you want to go. And that's what I did for this trip. First, I looked at dates in my schedule when I had time to take a week-long trip. Then I searched on the website Going for flight deals during my available time frame. I was looking for business class flight deals, but you can find deals in all classes. There were several deals I discovered, but I picked Dublin because I hadn't been before and it was on my bucket list. I really like the Going website because it only focuses on flights. Also, it is very simple to use, which means something to this senior. My home airport is Phoenix, which typically makes all international flights more expensive. However, Going allows you to plug in your home airport and shows deals from your city. This was one of the few trips I've taken in a while where I haven't had to fly to LA to take advantage of a deal. This was an amazing trip, so I'm sure I'm going to use this method again to save money, but it also added a little improvisational spirit to my traveling, which I thought was exciting. Now, here are a few tips if you are planning a trip to Dublin.
Getting around. First, let me say that my default when traveling is to walk. I love exploring a new city on foot. However, after overdoing it my first couple of days, I purchased a Leap card, which you can buy at any convenience store for €5. You can then put money on the card to use on trams and buses. I used both and never waited more than a few minutes. I did see bikes and scooters around the city, but they weren't as prevalent as I've seen in other European cities. To get from the airport, there's a direct bus called Air Coach. I purchased a ticket when I got off the plane for €12. The express bus takes you directly to the heart of the city center. The rideshare apps that work in Dublin are Bolt, FreeNow, and Uber. I discovered they all just connect you with a taxi driver. Unlike in many countries where anyone can operate a rideshare, you have to be a licensed taxi driver in Ireland. On my way back to the airport, I ordered one through FreeNow, and my driver told me that they all work the same and go on a meter. So one company isn't cheaper than another. I paid about €24 to get back to the airport, which was twice as much as the Air Coach bus on arrival. Advance bookings. There is one ticket you need to book in advance. I did not and was out of luck. It is for the Kilmainham Jail, which is a former prison in Kilmainham, Dublin. It is supposed to be a very interesting museum. When I looked on the website, tickets were sold out for at least a month. As for day trip excursions, it's not a bad idea to wait on booking until a little closer to the date and keep an eye on the weather. Of course, it rains frequently in Ireland, so you can't always time the weather, but you might want to avoid booking an excursion on a day that is predicting heavy rain. Senior and solo travelers. For senior and solo travelers, I found Dublin to be an extremely friendly and fun city. One local did tell me to be careful at night, but frankly, after all the touring I accomplished during the day, I was usually back to my hotel before nightfall. If you do hang out at pubs or find yourself walking the streets at night, just keep an eye on your belongings. For seniors, the walking involved some slight inclines and cobblestones, but was mostly easy to navigate. Also, Dublin is a very casual place. I dressed comfortably and packed lightly. My favorite kind of travel. So that's it, my first deals over destination trip. As always, if you have questions, feel free to ask in the comments section. I have left a whole bunch of links in the description below, which should help you if you're planning a trip to Ireland. You'll find links to most of the sites I mentioned in the video, information on Leap cards and the Air Coach, and links to videos on my 2 day trips to Dublin. Also, check out the Senior Solo Travel website, where all my videos are laid out in an easy-to-access format, and the Travel Facebook forum, where you can interact with other travelers. And if you'd like to follow my senior and solo travel journeys, please like and subscribe. Next stop, Machu Picchu, Peru.